What's going on, YouTube family? It's been a long time, guys. Special shout out to the folks that kind of motivated me to do this video. I've been hit up, folks are asking me about, my pump, not my pump, but my sumps, my trigger systems, previous trigger system sumps, and do I still feel positive about it? I will say absolutely. Trigger systems, for an off-the-shelf retailer, a big box retailer, if you will, they make really good. They make really good products. I have no issues with my trigger system sumps. On this system, I wanted to do something different, so I kind of went the more customizable route, and I'll get into the details of that later. So this is a completely new system. This is a 305-gallon system, I should say, and I'm quoting the system, meaning the display as well as the sump. The display of this tank is 240 gallons, so it's 6 foot long by 30 inches deep, 30 and a half inches deep, and a little bit more than 25 inches tall. Generally, guys, I would tell you for really any reef saltwater setup, you always want a fat, thick, girthy tank. That sounded terrible. You want a tank with width, basically. And I will always be an advocate of, if you can get a tank that is wider than it is tall, that's always a win. I would not want to have or own anything more than 30 inches tall, period. But we're going to talk about, of course, that guy there, my magnificent sea anemone, that journey with that. A little bit on the bubble tips. The lighting that I have on this system, I went in a completely different direction. And then, of course, a life support system. Fun fact, guys, this system was transitioned from my old 160-gallon system to this system in 2 days, guys. 1 day, drained the old system, took all of the livestock, rocks, and the sand, and put in trash cans, guys. Now remember that my corals were glued. I didn't unglue these things, so I have to very carefully put these in these brute trash cans. And then the following day, this system was installed, and all of the sand, the rocks placed back into the system. 60% of the old water was transitioned over as well, and then everything else was new water. You're kind of seeing now, I'm just kind of pointing out some of the casualties. Overall, 90% of my corals kind of came through unscathed. This is, I want to say, 3 weeks in, something like that, almost a month in, so things are starting to return back to normal. Unfortunately, I do have some casualties. Of course, this is the new addition, the magnificent sea anemone. Those guys are very tricky, I would say, to keep, and I'll get into a little bit of detail there. Of course, you can see the Colorado sunburst bubble tip anemones. I've had them since 2017. I keep saying them. I had one. It split a handful of times. Decided to keep one of the daughters. It actually split as of, I want to say about a week or so ago. It just healed up, and I took the daughter anemone and I gave it away to a local, not really a pet store, but I would say a fish gallery, aquarium design group. Great guys. I do a lot of business with them. They are probably one of the preferred vendors for me anyway, and it also probably helps that they're really close by. This system is going to be a primary SPS dominant system. That is the goal for this system. So lots of light, lots of flow. So anyway, let's talk about this guy here, this purple magnificent sea anemone. I've kind of always wanted a magnificent sea anemone, but I was always scared to keep one, just because I know that they, compared to bubble tips and some of your other, I guess, other anemone options, they're probably on the more difficult side, and I do now understand why. I've had this guy over 2 weeks now. The first week was him being treated with fish flocks. Now, when I bought this anemone, the retailer that I purchased it from did indicate that this anemone was kept for a few months before being sold. And guys, that's really important, because these anemones do not do all that well transitioning into a system, into a new system. They generally just don't do all that well. Now, once they're established, my understanding is that they're relatively hardy. This guy, unfortunately, did have the cycle of the deflating, basically meaning that the anemone is pushing all of the contents, water, out of its system to attempt to flush something. Generally, bad bacteria is not making it. If the anemone is not feeling well. And so when that happens more than a couple of times, guys, you need to treat these guys. Otherwise, they will not do well in your system. So I did do the 7-day treatment. You can find them on most popular forums. I know Reef to Reef has a good forum on treating these guys, and I did follow that. I'm not going to say I'm out of the woods yet, but the anemone is doing much better. Now, again, these guys I've had for years. No issues whatsoever with the bubble tips. It's actually now to the point where anytime they split, I can induce them to split just by feeding them a couple times a week, and they're, as you can see here, they're pretty big. But yeah, every time they split, I'm just going to give away the daughter anemones. This guy, of course, I would love to have split, but at this moment, I'm just trying to make sure that I can keep it alive, which I think for the most part, I think most of my trouble days are over. Now, one thing that I did want to talk about with these anemones, they do require pretty specific conditions, meaning that they need lots of light, and they like to be at any high point. So I, as you guys can see here, kind of designed an island where this guy's receiving really good par. So he's getting around 450 par max per day. And he's on an island where he can't touch anything. And these anemones, otherwise, I'm pointing at the pumps in the weir, because what they'll do is if they can touch your glass or anything like that, they're going to attach to it and they're going to go to the highest point. And oftentimes that is near a power head or your overflow weir, where they can either clog something up or damage themselves. Now, I know folks may be getting on me about not having any pump covers. I've had this anemone in this tank. This is going on maybe a week and a half or so. Forgive me on my timelines, but he hadn't moved, and so I had them on there and I took them off. Now, the next thing that I do want to get into, guys, of course, is the lighting that I have on this system. I kind of went into a completely different direction. If you guys have followed any of my previous builds, I did have the Radeon G4 Non-Pros. This time, as you can see, I went with the Orphic version 4s or V4s generation 2. So these are the latest, greatest Orphics. Huge fan of their lights. Now, I also added recently some supplemental lights. These are the A360X Kessels. And I really did that just for, the enhanced shimmer. Not that I needed any more par, although those lights do add a little bit. And speaking of par, most aquariums are broken into 3 sections. They have an upper level, mid-level, and lower level. This tank is only mid and lower level. There is no area in this aquarium other than the very front and the very back and maybe the corners that receive less than 300 par. So up here, guys, that is 400 par section. There is going to be the middle 3s, and on the bottom, the lower 3s. So that's a testament to these lights. And remember, these lights are 14 inches off of the water line. So much so I'm actually comfortable at growing, and you can kind of see the blue tips there on those sticks, that I'm actually growing SPS on my sand bed. So that says a lot about the power of the Orphic. Still, here's a different angle. I don't have any of the filters out, so this is why the tank kind of looks a little bit different, but you can kind of see just really how brightly is lit. And I'm only running the lights at roughly 60%. The Kessels, of course, are at 100%, and they're roughly 12 inches above the water line. Just really there, guys, to complement the shimmer. And, of course, just add a little bit more par, but I can technically turn up the Orphics if I wanted to. Now, because these lights are sitting in a canopy, heat is an issue, even with these LEDs. So what I did is add a total of 5 fans. You see 3 fans mounted at the back. They're all sucking air out of the canopy. Those fans are rated at 17 cubic feet of air per minute. So that's the amount of air that they're taking out of the canopy. That is actually not a lot, guys. And by themselves, the tank will get to a temperature where I'm not necessarily comfortable with. I generally like to keep my tank water lower than 79 degrees. So I actually added 2 exhaust fans at the very top. So you're going to see here in just a moment that there's a ventilation port. So you have one there right between the orifice and the Kessel, and then I have one on the other side that you guys will see here in a moment. The upper fans, so the ventilation fans that are sitting at the very top, guys, are moving 100 cubic feet of air per minute. So altogether, I'm getting probably mid 200, maybe close to 250 cubic feet of air per minute that's being moved out of the top of the canopy. And I'm here in Texas, so it's pretty warm. We've had a couple warm days, and that tank doesn't get any warmer than, around 77 degrees. So on the low side, maybe the lower 76 degree-ish. On the high side, upper 77 degree range. So nice, exactly where I want it to be. Now, fun fact about this tank stand is that it's actually metal. So guys, these are magnetic panels that stick to the stand, and I'm removing them right now so you guys can kind of see the life support system that kind of keeps this tank going. This tank, for the most part, is very automated, guys. I do use an Apex. Huge fan of Apex. I don't rely on all of the automation elements. I don't want to do that because stuff happens, but it does keep the day-to-day going with the system. So I'm kind of proud of this, to be honest, because this is the first time that I've actually hard plumbed my tank. If you guys are considering hard plumbing your aquarium, do yourself a huge favor. Get unions. Wherever you can put a union, get a union. And I know people say that stuff. I ran into a couple of issues where I actually had to go in and cut out pipe, add new pipe there, and then add unions for fitment purposes, and it just offers you so much flexibility. And also gate valves and ball valves. Gate valves, spears, really valves in general, spears is top notch, just FYI. So if you guys see here, these are my or actually 3. I have 2 dosing containers and an ATO there. The 2 dosing containers the entire system is put together or made by Advanced Acrylic, so I actually reached out to them to have them make me these dosing containers. I'm using the ATI Essentials program, guys. I love the program. Been using it for over 2 years now, over 2 years. I use the ATI Essentials Pro. I do dilute it. I said dilute it, which is why these containers are pretty big. These are actually 12-liter containers. And when you dilute the 2-liter solution, it makes 10 liters. I had a little bit of leftover, which is why there's a total of 12. After using ATI Essentials on a year and a half on my previous system, I will tell you that if you're not keeping up with ICP tests on a routine and regular basis, your corals can suffer a little bit. There are elements that they tend to use more so than others. So what I've noticed is that if I add fresh salt water, it kind of perks them back up. So I added another dose, 3rd dose to this system, and that's specifically just for very small water changes, guys. And again, not to dilute anything, but just to add a little bit of elements, which will allow me to, in theory anyway, postpone some of my ICP test results. So as you guys can see here, I filled this guy up to 12 liters, and I'm dosing close to 90 both, so 45 from 1 and 45 from Essentials 2, so close to 90 mils per day. This is my ATO. It is roughly between 5 and 7 gallons. I go through, the freshwater about a week. I actually like that. I could have gotten, of course, a larger ATO. I didn't want to do that because this is going to keep me engaged in the system just by checking on where the water level is, and then I tend to start looking at other things. This is a media reactor by Vertex. Unfortunately, I don't believe they're around any longer. They make really quality products. I always like to keep carbon running in my system. And, of course, the way it's plumbed, if I ever need to change it, it's nothing more than me turning a couple of these gate valves and undoing the unions and popping them right on off, and it's very simple and easy. I also had Advanced Acrylic to make me acrylic socks. So I'm going to open up the mechanical filtration section of the Sump, and you guys are going to see those acrylic socks. And what I have in there, guys, I mean, acrylic socks are great. I actually like the standard socks too. The problem is with the standard socks, unfortunately, you can't really clean them, or I have a problem cleaning them after they've been used a couple times. So, oh yeah, that spirit valve. This is, by the way, I know I'm kind of jumping around, but this is a bean animal style drain system. So that's why you see two drains here going into the mechanical section, and then that third drain that's not. I like to put ball valves on everything just in case I need to do any work or maintenance. I can shut things off as necessary. So here, back to the acrylic sock section. I just kind of have filter floss that's in there. And, you know, when you pop it off, you can kind of see how it drains. Filter floss works great at polishing your water. Just keep in mind that they clog very quickly. And, of course, if you have your ATO connected with automatic pumps, it will cause you to dump more fresh water into your system. So keep on top, or stay on top of that. Keep on top of that. Huge fan of Nios skimmers, guys. This is a Nios 220 skimmer. Not only do they look good, they work incredibly well. You do want to watch out if you do have any type of sump lights from shining into them. As far as my return pump, you guys, I have, again, Ecotech. This is a Vector L2. I'm actually quite surprised that it's able to push through all of the different, you know, unions and 90-degree connectors that I have here. And then this is my fuse. This is probably the highlight of the system. I've never done a separate fuse. I think going forward on any system, I will do that for sure, It offers just so many options. I do have Miracle Mud in the system, but if I need to change it out, feed it with Fido, it's nothing more than me turning a ball valve to shut that water off from getting to the main system. And then lighting on the fuse, guys, I kind of did a radical blend. So I have a H160 here. Horticultural light, which is a pinkish color light, and next to that guy I do have the Kessel 160 Tuna Sun. And so for me, this is going to give me the widest band of spectrum to grow practically anything in that fuse, and it's literally ballooned. I find that some algae grow better under daylight, and other algae like Cato grow better under the pink light. And so this kind of gives me the best of both worlds. So, guys, thanks again for watching and tuning in. If you have any questions, I know I kind of sped through this, but if you have any questions, please feel free to leave them in the comments. Thanks again for watching. If you like the content, subscribe, and I'll see you guys till next time.